The president of the Crime Prevention Research Center tells OAN that the first and so far only complete audit of 2020 election mail-in ballots shows about 6% of the votes cast were illegal. One America's John Hines has more from Washington.
These voter irregularities in this particular town of Montana, and serving this up as a cautionary tale about some of these changes that are contemplated in legislation like H.R. 1, the idea of normalizing some of these changes that were made to election procedures to accommodate the pandemic. What have you found, sir?
Missoula County is the second largest county in Montana. It's a heavily Democratic county. And this is the first real audit that's been done, all of the mail-in ballots that have been done in any county in the United States in the 2020 election. And what they found was that there were about 6% more votes counted than they had envelopes for those votes, which is very problematic. And in addition, they found a number of cases where there weren't signatures and where there weren't dates on the ballots. When you add all that up, you're talking about 7% of the ballots in the county.
What I'm hearing is that it sounds like a lot of votes this most recent election cycle were of the mail-in variety. Is that what I'm hearing then?
All the votes in Missoula County were mail-in votes.
This is, I guess, an accommodation for the pandemic. I think this was some legislation signed by the governor. Is that what I understand?
It was an executive order from the governor.
And this is perhaps an illustration in a fairly small town of you're saying what could happen on a much larger scale. Is that essentially what you're suggesting here?
Montana hasn't been on anybody's radar in terms of vote fraud occurring. And if you can have 7% or more of the vote being really questionable and problematic in a place where it hasn't even been on the radar, it raises real questions about the validity of voting by mail in other places. You know, this is the first time in the country with regard to this last election that we've actually had an audit of all the mail-in ballots that had occurred. It raises real questions here. The Secretary of State's expressed interest in looking into this more. Also, looks like there's a good chance that there'll be hearings on this in both the state Senate and possibly the state House.
And you said just a moment ago, this is the first audit of mail-in ballots in the country?
All the ballots. You had in Maricopa County in Arizona, they had a review of 100 of the mail-in ballots that were there. In Cobb County in Georgia, they had a review of 10% of the ballots that were there. But you really can't get to the types of issues that they were able to get to in Montana when they looked at all the mail-in ballots that were there, all the envelopes. And the reason is here, only by looking at all of them could you tell that there was a discrepancy between the number of votes and the number of envelopes that you had. It's only by looking at all those that you were able to really get a good handle on, missing signatures or signatures that weren't checked, as well as other problems that you have, like not having the proper dates on.
So the county of Missoula, Montana, is the only voting, situation in the country where they have audited or looked at each and every single ballot cast in this last election cycle. That's what you're saying?
It's the only county where they've looked at all the envelopes that have been presented, and they compare. Once they counted all the envelopes, they could go and say, well, you got almost 5,000 more votes counted than you have envelopes for those votes. Since all the votes were done by mail, there had to be an envelope for each one of the votes that were counted. You can't have more votes counted than you had envelopes for the ballots.
And I understand, is it legal or illegal to count ballots that don't have an envelope?
It's illegal.
And yet it sounds like somehow they were counted. Is that essentially what happened?
Yeah, you have like 5,000 votes were counted that were illegal.
Dr. John Lott, the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center, thank you for talking to us on One American News, sir.
Thank you very much.
Want to see more videos like this? Visit